Greetings, family. Am I in the shot, Brother Shaq?
I think you're in the shot, but let me see your phone. For sure. You look great to me.
Well, that is good, right?
It's true.
We always want people in our lives that don't need anything special. They just need who you are, and that's good enough, right?
That's right.
Nothing special. Just love. That's special enough.
Definitely.
Yeah. So listen, y'all, we want to do this show. It just begs for it, right? Like, it begs for a decode. Especially because everybody's on it right now.
Right.
Well, at least a couple of days ago.
Yeah, it might be
you know
on
how things go fast. But
on something else.
Yeah. And listen, it's an hour-long show. This is our last show of 2018.
For real this time. I know I said that last week.
No, I said it. I said it first.
You said it first?
Yeah.
Right.
So, and we were deciding, let's do a little lanyard. Let's throw one in. Decoding show. Y'all know these are my favorite kind.
Man, I love these shows, Mama Fiyah. We don't do them enough. But, there's not a need to do them all the time. But I think when it's something like this, I think that, it's the right time, the right circumstances. Man,
shout out to my sweatshirt. This is Akade.
Akade.
The Akade collection.
Our sweatshirt. Shout out to our sweatshirt.
Yeah. Not mine at all. This is Brother Shaq's
This
sweatshirt.
is our sweatshirt.
And I'm excited to wear this sweatshirt because it's his, but also rep this sweatshirt
Akade.
because it's the Akade collection. And instead of the white man on a polo horse playing polo, we got,
we got Mother
the
Africa.
motherlands. The motherland.
Shout out, we got Shantice Denise and Alka Pittman joining us.
Oh, what's happening, family? What's happening, my sisters? Y'all get the brothers.
Right. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week.
Sure did. And so thank y'all for being here. Something I was gonna say right before that. Oh, Habaragani.
Habaragani. Speaking of what you were talking about, right?
Yes. I'm saying Habaragani.
Ujamaa. And what is Ujamaa?
Collective work and responsibility. No. Familyhood and cooperative economics.
That's right. You talking about Ujima? That was yesterday. We can do a little recap. First day was Umoja for unity. The second day was
my favorite, Kujichagulia. I teach everybody, every young person that I come in contact with Kujichagulia, and that's self-determination. That means you do for self.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing.
And then Ujima,
collective work and responsibility.
Right, very, very important one because that looks at what your individual contribution is to the whole. And then today, for Ujima, we look at cooperative economics and familyhood, which we know is in America in the capitalist society very, very important to our quality of life as people of color. And so, it's a very important principle that we have been lifting up for the entire half a decade, Mama Fiyah, that we've been on the air, but also in real life, like the brother said today, appreciating us for doing it for real.
Doing it for real and communal living, familyhood and cooperative economics. We would like to 2019 is help people with communal living. Help people do that because that's how we're gonna survive this. That's we can't do it alone in that individual way, and that goes for everything, including finances and economics.
That's right.
That we have to rely on each other and love one another enough to say you're welcome into my home and into my heart, and let's do this together. We're better together. Yeah.
Wow. I like that theme.
Yeah.
So Facebook Live family, let people know This is an important show. We're going to be decoding the bird box. He's queuing up the intro. We're starting at 5 o'clock on time today. Look, I'm finishing out the year on time.
Come on. Maybe that'll just bring us into
right.
2019.
We ain't never out of time. We always in time. We about to start dropping them jewels on your family. So. Oh, yeah. You get the mic. All right.
These some fancy chairs, though, brother.
Yes, indeed.
It's
See,
so
I'm
big.
all lean with a rock with it. All right. Good evening and welcome to the True Love Movement Hour. It's your host, Brother Shaq.
And Mama Fiyah.
For the True Love Movement this December, True Love Movement Hour, this December 29th, 2018, here in New Orleans, the last True Love Movement Hour for 2018, Mama Fiyah.
Mm-hmm.
So glad to be here. So grateful for everybody who is joining us, whether it's your first time or you've been rolling with us for the last 5 years. So many new folks are discovering the True Love Movement Hour and rediscovering the True Love Movement Hour. So we're honored for that. So much happening right now in this particular time, in this moment in time today. And of course, rounding out the end of the year, a lot of people are getting ready to get cut off for 2019, Mama Fiyah. So, but we hope you're listening to the True Love Movement Hour. We have a place for you here. Shout out to our Facebook Live family. They're joining us. And you can simply like the True Love Movement page on Facebook, and you can catch us live here in the studio. And of course, listening to us on the AM dial on 1230, and then the World Wide Web at www.wbok1230m.com. And of course, the WBOK 1230M app that's available in the Google Play and the App Store, Mama Fiyah. What's happening?
Well, I just want to also thank WBOK, just from me personally for the, the platform, and also just being so bomb, being the Black-owned radio station local here in New Orleans. It's just so amazing. And so I'm glad to be here representing also WBOK 1230 AM.
That's it. Courageous.
And so I did do some self-care today.
Yes.
Shout out to self-care. Listen, my sisters, y'all need to be at Greer's super class.
Mm-hmm.
It is so fun. And it's so amazing to see her so limber and so toned and amazing dancer and sweating and get it in. And I really look up to Greer a whole lot, and she's powerful in teaching her class. And so I'm just saying, for self-care, especially for the new year, quote unquote, we can, I just think it's good for us to work our bodies out, dance, under the tutorship of Greer, because she's so amazing. So yeah, I'm gonna do that. I decided I'm doing Greer Super Class again. Last year was a little rough as far as that in particular, but I'm gonna do that for myself every Saturday.
I'm glad, Queen, because every time you go, you're always better when you get back.
Yeah, I'm all sweaty. I'm all like
sweaty. And I like
ready for the world, stretched out.
But you feel your energy is always really, really amazing.
Yeah.
After have that experience, sisterhood and dancing and sweating, and you've been working with Greer in her class off and on now for some years.
For some years, definitely, and I fell off a little, but.
Well, that's the challenge that we have in this reality of staying on our self-care regimen, to so that we can stay balanced. Yeah. So I'm glad, and I'm gonna do my part to support and make sure that you're there.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, King.
You know that, and and again, shout out WBOK. Last week we said this was going to be our last show of the year, and we didn't do True Love Movement Tuesdays, family. We just were exhausted. Full transparency, we were just exhausted. We knew folks were doing things with family and what have you, and we just elected to say we ain't gonna do it. And we chilled out and we relaxed and did some reflection. And I'm gonna tell y'all, I know we needed it, Mama Fiyah, right?
I know I needed it for sure. and it's good when we take time off, because we're always being called. We're always being called in so many ways to support in so many different areas of our lives, that when we take some time, it's sacred, take time. So please know that we needed that. We needed that time. And we're gearing up for strategically, teaching solutions in every place and facet of our lives. We're gearing up for 2019.
That's right. And
yeah. And we know it's a new year. We know it's a new year from the Gregorian calendar, so it's not necessarily a new year. We know that springtime bring actually the new year. Right. But there is still a portal there because we've been taught this and programmed to understand it. And so there is an opportunity in the new year to change and do things a little differently.
That portal. So the doors of the church are open, family, is what we're saying. That portal that's there.
Yeah, so also we're gonna decode today, which is so fun. And I was like, if we're gonna do a show, Brother Shaq, we definitely need to decode. And then we definitely need to decode this movie, Bird Box, that's been all over Netflix. And you don't realize how many people actually are tied into and hooked into Netflix. Netflix is like it's like a revolution of television and these kind of things. I never realized how many people actually have Netflix. We don't use Netflix very much.
That's all we have.
Right, that's definitely all we have, and we don't even tap into Netflix on a regular basis. But it just seems like everybody was watching this movie, Bird Box, in mass,
the last couple of weeks.
And I think it came out on Christmas or a couple of days maybe before.
Right.
And how amazing it is that so many people watched it.
Right.
So I think they had some marketing and promotions, definitely. Mm-hmm. As soon as you open up Netflix, it was right there. Right. And it's showing you, it didn't go to like the picture of Bird Box. It went to the video, right? So you get hooked in immediately.
Very strategic.
And it worked.
Yes.
Whatever they did worked because everybody in that grummo is talking about Bird Box.
Yep, to the degree that if you're not talking about Bird Box, you're going to go look and see what it is.
What's all the hoopla?
Just because people are talking about it. So.
And it's a lot of hoopla, y'all.
There's a whole lot of hoopla.
Yeah, but there are also some things to critically analyze. And that's with anything, Brother Shaq. That's with anything you intake. Anything, whether it be media or just any, before you ingest anything.
Right.
You definitely need to look at it and see if it's good or see what's going on with it, and not whether it's good. I'm talking about like maybe when we ingest food, we need to make sure it smells right and all these different things. But when we're putting something into our minds, we definitely need to filter it with our own experiences. And what we know about media is that they use media for propaganda every time. And so if I am gonna watch something, I'm never gonna boob out and be like, I'm just gonna
sit here and watch.
Yeah, I'm analyzing everything from like cartoons, from every single thing that comes on. And listen, if I get around the television, I'm looking at all the advertisement, the commercials, the songs they use, everything. All of that is purposefully planted there.
Yes, I wanted Mama Wisdom. It just feels right.
It does.
Mama Wisdom, yeah. So I wanted you to, before we went on to the decoding, because we're talking about it very matter-of-factly, but I don't think that all of our people who are watching or people who are listening know why you're saying what you're saying in terms of, because so much of this stuff is on a very superficial level. As our people are, raising their consciousness, it's still on as the young people call it, a fake deep level. So people are doing things, or in the motion of doing things that they're not really connected to why they're doing them, why they're meaningful. They're just, that's what you got to do. But they still, because they haven't tapped in. So I wanted to go a little deeper and just for you to clarify the reason why you're analyzing these things is not to be deep or to be woke, but this is part of maintaining your sanity.
Yes, it's part of maintaining your own mind.
Right. That if in our inability or disinterest in critical analysis attributes to our lack of sanity or our wherever we are in terms of not being in our right minds. And so we have the power to critically analyze, to deeply examine what we're about to take in and decide whether or not we in fact should take it in. For one, I mean, there's all kinds of things that go with that, but I wanted to put that out there because it's that there's a lot of good things, affirmative things that are just so trendy that people are just doing, and they're doing on a very superficial, ritualistic level, and they're still getting some benefit from it. Don't get me wrong, but they're missing what's there. Kind of like what we know is happening with Bird Box, Mama Fiyah.
Yeah, I want to say this, that I say it every time I do a decoding show, that decoding, my beginnings with decoding started off with Brother Panic. I'm not sure if anybody knows Brother Panic on YouTube, but he would take and decode music videos, decode movies, decode all kind of things, and it just was so neat. And I just started doing it myself and critically analyzing media.
Right.
And he would always bring in the metaphysical component of it, the stuff that is unseen, but also like what's in plain sight,
Right.
for all of us to see. And so it's just fun. It's fun to do, but it's also like a practice. It's a
Right.
practice that all of us need to do, and we need to do it with our children so they can also do it. Because our children are like sponges. People say they're like sponges. And so that means whatever they're intaking as far as media is concerned, they're internalizing, they're absorbing it. And so we need to teach them, like we don't listen to regular radio, but when we do, if we do, we're listening to the songs. Did y'all hear that? What do y'all think he was saying?
Right.
Why was he saying that? Did y'all hear like the baby voice in the background? Why do you think they have a baby voice? And I mean,
Right.
like the answer, asking the question why. And so Bird Box is fun. It's what everybody's talking about, and I'd like to dig in.
Well, I want us to dig in. Disclaimer before we dig in, family, it's going to be total spoilers. So if you haven't seen it and you do want to see it, you can log out now, and then we'll have it ready for you once you've seen it so you can kind of have some reference points on it. But we're going to talk about things that occurred in the movie. And we just want you to be aware of that. By now we think most of our people have seen it.
According to social media, everyone has seen it because there are memes about it and all kind of crazy stuff. So,
and there's a lot of thought. There's a lot of different thoughts and opinions out there, and so forth. And so we're gonna do our analysis. And Mama Fiyah is, Mama Wisdom, the brightest teacher on this. She taught me this skill in a way that I didn't have it before. I had it, but in terms of decoding media, she honed those skills for me to be able to, be supportive, obviously, today, but also to really be able to see and zero in. That's number one. Number two, we're highly sensitive to the media and things that we take in because we're so deliberate about it.
Watch it. Yeah, we never watch it.
So we see things that people who may be looking at things all the time miss simply because you do get desensitized, family. So there's some things that we think were missed that we're going to talk about in this decoding show. So let's sit tight, ride with us for this next hour. There's so many things you could be doing right now, and so we're honored you've chosen to be with us on this last Saturday here in 2018 on the True Love Movement Hour. We're about to decode, family, Bird Box, Mama Fiyah. What's happening?
Yeah, and I want to say that we've only seen it one time.
Just once. Yeah.
We went to see Get Out twice.
But we saw Get Out the actual day it came out.
The day it came out.
And we decoded it the day after.
The day after.
So we don't have anybody's information. So we've not seen any decoding.
No, I haven't seen decoding about Bird Box at all. But I'm just saying, it's probably best practice to see something more than once.
Right.
But let me say this: I don't want to see it again.
Right.
I don't want to witness any of that anymore because of the heavy duty propaganda that was in it. It wasn't that it was scary. It just was way too much for no reason, especially in the beginning when all of the the mysterious creature or entity or whatever was coming into America, because it started in Russia, which is a big political game to play right now
in this time,
as far as the entity starting in Russia.
Right.
And we got to realize when stuff like that is placed, it's placed like that on purpose.
Because it could be anywhere.
You know, and I actually was reading a little bit about the book, because the whole movie comes from a book. And they didn't start it in Russia in the book, right? So Netflix is playing games. Netflix is doing all kind of things as far as playing chess, you know, with people's minds and in political affiliations, to make things, make you draw into them, you know, like make it to the point where you start feeling something. And so we only saw it one time. I will not see it again. As a matter of fact, if you have ever had any suicidal thoughts in your life, you do not need to watch this movie.
Right.
You know, we do not need to watch people kill themselves. And what I've seen is that there's a lot of that going on Netflix.
Right.
You know, sometimes we don't watch it a lot, but if there is some downtime, maybe we will. And there was a movie called Cam, which was also, as soon as you open up Netflix, it started playing the video.
Right.
And this young woman all about self-harm. All about self-harm. You had to actually witness those things. We have to be careful when someone is showing the act of self-harm or the act of suicide.
Right.
It's jarring, and yeah, it makes you feel thrilled. It makes you feel, but it also affects us. It impacts us in a way that we don't need to watch that in that. And so this is a new thing going on. Remember back in the day when they never showed children getting hurt? Do you remember that? Back in the day, it was like a no-no. They didn't show children being hurt.
Right.
And now it's just like, oh, you see children laying on the floor with their neck cut, and and you see that now. And so back in the day, they would not show these you can see it, sensationalized ways of people dying, graphic ways of people dying. But in this film especially, that's how it starts. That's how you get drawn in, by seeing people just kill themselves, right? Over and over again. Asian people, it doesn't matter, men, women, people running out in front of cars, or later getting into a car with, fire on fire. It's too much. Right? And so my people who have ever been suicidal, and the thing about it is that our people suffer from oppression, depression.
Correct.
Black people suffer from depression. And so we all have thought of like, what if we didn't exist, or what if we weren't here anymore?
Right.
But some of our people, that's all of our people, but some of our people have gone far enough to even attempt suicide, and even, and that's very serious. It's touched my life, Brother Shaq, in ways that has changed my life and impacted me in very serious ways. And so one time of Bird Box is enough. Please don't watch it over and over and over again. Don't let your children watch it. I really don't believe it's something that children should watch, because it gives you the option. It gives you an idea that you can kill yourself all these different ways. Know,
That's
and
one thing for sure.
And the thing about it is this entity who, if you look at it, it will make you kill yourself.
Right.
That's sick. It's the whole premise of it is just like, wow. And so that means it happened fast. It happened so fast where this woman who is the main person or the protagonist, she is pregnant, and they sent her, they let you know more about her as the main character. And do you remember how cold and kind of disconnected she was? She was isolated. She didn't go anywhere. I don't know if you remember that, Brother Shaq. She was an artist.
Right.
And she was isolated. She didn't go anywhere.
She was very involved in that, and she was in denial of her pregnancy.
Denial of her pregnancy, which was a big part of the end and how it was. So it was all disconnected as far as it didn't go from beginning to end. It was flashbacks and forward and these kind of things. But she was a white woman. Sandra Bullock plays her character, Mallory. And they put a lot of time to show that she was disconnected.
Right.
And so it happened fast. It started happening right within the first 10 minutes of the movie. And then she gets put into a home with other quote-unquote people who survived. They decide to black out the windows because you can't see the entity or whatever.
Right.
And so there's a lot of drama that happens in the movie. But then there's this beautiful black character. There were two beautiful black characters, black men. And we can't ignore when black characters come into white movies.
Right.
Or and we want to be like, oh, we don't see any color, and da, da, da. But please know, when there is a black character, it's on purpose. For my actors out there, they look for Asian characters, or they may look for Latina characters, or they may look for black characters in specific, 35 to 40-year-old characters when they send out for the audition. And so I don't know about the book, if it was a black character in the book, but it's definitely a black protagonist. His name was Tom, too, which was, they could have picked any name. They could have picked any name.
Tom is a hood name.
And so, and then he's played by this beautiful, fine Trevante brother. And somebody said that he's from Louisiana, which is cool. And he was so good. The acting, it wasn't stellar, but he was good. He was really good, because we really thought that he really would like somebody like Sandra Bullock. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how old she is, but and I know that's ageist a little bit, but at the end of the day, it just wasn't a good match for me. But they pulled this fine black man as the protagonist through the whole thing. I mean, he was helping and saving and doing all these things.
A lot of leadership.
Beautiful, beautiful leadership on his part. And the part that really, really made me realize this was propaganda is when he killed himself.
Right.
That's we should never have to witness the suicide of a black man on film in a pop culture mainstream kind of way, and I know it happens, and I know we saw it in what was the Nat Turner movie with the brother. What was the last the Nat Turner movie that came out, Brother Shaq?
The Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation, yes. Right? We had to witness him being hung, and that was a lot. But to see this man carry this movie in a way, he was the heart of the movie. He was the sweetness and the beauty of the movie. He was the warrior of the movie. Kill himself and sacrifice his life for Sandra Bullock and the babies. It was
it was his babies?
No, they weren't his babies. But it's a trip. The babies' names were boy and girl, which is so political. Right now, people are really talking about genderless babies or genderless children.
What they call them? Babies. Y'all know about that family? Babies.
Like you're not a girl or a boy.
Yeah.
Until a certain age, they're gonna let you decide.
You decide. But
she never even named them. And I think when they start putting these kind of things, gender and call them by their gender and stuff, these are political things that they're putting into a movie. And we have to realize that. Even Trevante, the black actor, that's political to make him be the protagonist, the male protagonist in the movie. And so why would they choose a black man? And it could have easily been Leonardo DiCaprio, but I don't know if Netflix is gonna have a movie with him. But it could have been any white man played his role, right? But it was this young, fine black man, And why? We have to ask ourselves why. Why was he there? And I think he was there to be killed in the end, Brother Shay. Well, I think it was there for the impact of that, to see a beautiful black man be so amazing and wonderful and kill himself the way he did in that movie.
And too, there is a long history of the connection, the close connection between black men and older white women, or older white women and black boys. From on the plantation. On the plantation, the black boys, the enslaved African boys were often the pet of the mistress or the house, the slave master's wife. And then we know Like now, so many people are talking about, particularly in New Orleans, but it's happening nationwide because of what's happening in New Orleans. Like in the charter school systems, the older white women typically are drawn to the younger black, because there's a power dynamic in that. There's a power dynamic in that relationship, and the black male and the white woman, particularly the aging white women, have the same have a very similar cultural currency in terms of their hierarchy in society. Of course, anything or anyone white is going to be higher in this society than anyone black, but the black man and the white woman have kind of always jockeyed for the second position to the white man. It was always at his pleasure. So they've been like buddied up culturally for a very long time, Mama Fiyah. So her being so much older, and him, falling into that role of protecting her and making sure that she was okay. In other words, there's already a groove for these things. This is not new things that we're seeing. So much so that we don't think much about it because we know that's just how it goes, just how it goes.
And toward the end of the movie, when he did see the entity and kill himself, he got off one shot. He got off another shot. When you thought he was going to kill himself, he killed
right.
one of the maniacs, that can actually see the entity and become like the entity's henchman or something.
Right.
And so it proves he was Superman. He
right.
was Superman, and I've been saying that for years. The black man is Superman.
Absolutely.
And we can't take for granted that he was placed in this role and died the way he did in the movie. I think, also, why were all the possessed people white? This movie wasn't about black and white, and I get it. It wasn't a race-centered movie. But you never saw like a black henchman person.
Not once.
Not one that took the entity and was like, look at it, it's beautiful. And all these people, there was not one. And so they strategically put the black people, there were no black women in the movie. Not and remember, we only saw this movie once. So and I'm not going to see it again.
A black extra.
I may be wrong, but I think it's very on purpose that there were no black women. I think it's on purpose that there were two black men and they both sacrificed themselves.
Yes.
Both of them. I'm thinking Charlie's smart. He's the one that gave everybody the idea that they might be demons and the idea that they should close, block out the windows and everything. He was the one, and when he heard somebody coming in the grocery store, he decided to push the man out, but he pushed himself out with it.
Right.
That could have totally been. And there's a lot of illogical things in this movie. There's a lot of times me and Brother Shaq was laughing like, okay, now that could never happen, right? And we get it, and things are written into the script and all that, but why? You have to ask why. It was very sad to see Charlie be killed as well.
He was writing a book. He was writing a book, though. I'm saying he wasn't just a run-of-the-mill brother. I mean, the way they, in the very short time that they did whatever character development that they did, that's what didn't make sense because of the way the characters were developed or underdeveloped for some of the things that ended up happening. You know what I'm saying? It didn't flow. So we know that the agenda was much larger than any kind of character development for you to feel a certain way. There was some message that had to get out there.
And what's the message?
What is the message?
Listen. So the title of the movie tells you the whole complete message.
Right.
When I'm hearing people talk about, I'm seeing people talk about this movie Bird Box, nobody's bringing up the birds. Nobody's bringing up what's a bird box, and why did they name the movie Bird Box? The name of my movie that's coming out, coming soon is Runaway Girl.
That's right.
And that means everything. The title of your piece means everything. It centers around the understanding of what it is. And so, Bird Box. So, Sandra Bullock's character, Mallory, she notices that the entity is a black thing. Of course, shadow thing, because she couldn't see it because everything was blacked out. But she also saw the birds running from it, right? And so when they went to get some stuff from the grocery store, they just so happened to have birds in the grocery store. So she took the birds back, I guess, realizing that they could help in some way.
Right.
And the birds were in a cage. And I don't know why people cage birds. I don't know why people use birds as pets at all. Birds are supposed to fly. That's what they're supposed to do, you know. And I'm so glad that we still have wild birds right now, because there's going to be a time in life where maybe there aren't any wild animals walking around, you know, flying. And so we should not cage birds, just, you know, but that's my own view. But anyway, so she takes the birds and then realizes that when the entity is around, the birds let people know, right? They let people know, uh-oh, this is like a time where you should be careful.
Right.
And so Bird Box is, it's not the cage, but when they were deciding that they were going to go try to find this place where the entity didn't exist, or
this utopia, people were trying
where to go. They're trying to find, you know, one place to be. They decide to take the birds with them, and they put the birds in a black box and actually take it, you know, it in the boat when she has to. It's kind of crazy. I'm thinking, how are those birds surviving?
Right.
You know, they're in a little bitty box. Then at one time the baby had them, like the little girl had them, but the woman and the girl were the only two that ever had the birds.
That's right.
And I think that's an indication too. But when we think about the bird box, Brother Shaq, I think we think about the heart.
That's right.
We think about the heart, about seeing, you know, much of the movie is about being blindfolded and not being able to see.
Not having sight, visualization.
Not being able, you can't look, because if you look, the entity is going to make you kill yourself.
Right.
And so the bird box was an important part of it, is because the birds flutter and tell you.
That's right.
And so I decided that something that I could see while I was watching is that the bird box is the heart.
Right.
The birds were green. You know, green is the color for the heart chakra.
That's right.
And the bird box is the heart, and an indication of how we should be seen.
Right. Now, Mama Fiyah, you broke that down beautifully. And, you know, when we were talking about, I think we were in the kitchen, my first take on it, I thought that the thing was about the bird box represented our lower selves. I thought it represented, you know, much lower chakra, because, you know, birds fly and flutter, and that the birds were employed more as an alarm system kind of a thing. And so when the birds started responding, that was an indicator that it was time to fight or flight, to move from this thing. But that wasn't really complete, though, because it didn't address the significance of why the birds were in a box, though. You know, I mean, they could have been any kind of thing, and they could have been any kind of color, too. I mean, so what I want our family and folks who are watching and listening to realize that, as you just pointed out, nothing in this movie happened accidentally or matter-of-factly. Like, everything is deliberately done. And for our people who are visual artists or musicians or singers or songwriters or poets or authors, you know that you create something, you create it very deliberately and very specifically. And it could be anything. That's what you were saying opening up, right, Mama Fiyah? And it could have had any scenario. They could have had anyone play these parts. You know, it was cast a certain way. And whether we're talking on a conscious level or a subconscious level, the folks who create these things are communicating in very real and profound ways. And this is an allegorical situation. And for those of you who are familiar with allegory, you know, allegory is a story within a story, but within a story. And we're within a story. So there are many different levels and layers to this. So some of our folks are saying, Mama Fiyah, the movie was garbage, it was stupid, I didn't get it, I don't understand what all the fuss is about. Those people are not wrong, and they're not bad people. Those people are at a particular level of receiving information. So but there was still something in it for them to see it. You know, there was a pull. Something in there pulled them to it. You know what I'm saying?
The promotions and marketing.
The promotions and marketing draw. It's a draw.
It definitely is. And then when people say, "Oh, Bird Box this and Bird Box that," people are, get curious.
Right.
And they said that this Netflix movie broke all kind of records.
Right.
And so whatever they did worked.
Right.
And so I was reading a little something in the Wikipedia about it, and they just did a little synopsis, and they said that the birds kept the family from harm, is what it said. And I, in watching it, not really. It just alerted people. And what do you do when you are fearful? What do you do when you get scared? Your heart beats, your heart flutters, right? And that's a good indication that you're scared, and you need to buckle down and make sure. But I don't think so. I think what the basic premise on the critical analysis level is you see with your heart.
Yes.
You see with your heart, and that goes through, because there's going to be so much coming toward us. Right. So many things to see, like people killing themselves. Right. I'm saying in a movie, we should never watch that. You should never put yourself through that. But we're going to be seeing that. There are going to be some things that we have to see that may take you under, right. That may take you down. And so instead of seeing with our eyes, because our eyes can deceive us, Brother
all the time.
We can see something with our eyes, but we have to tone up, our relationship with our heart.
Right.
So to be able to see with it.
We had a brilliant, beautifully spirited and strong building discussion with young Xavier about that concept. He hadn't seen the movie, but we were talking about that part of it. And I really appreciate Mama Fiyah, the idea that this certain level of sensitivity that we have, that we feel. You know what I'm saying? What you were saying just now about feeling and being able to trust what we're feeling, not so much what we're looking at. Because think about this, family. Whenever you see something, can you ever really know? You don't really know what you're looking at. Some of the brothers who we've been working the last few days over the break, we kind of discussed that on how you may see something or someone who you feel is you can see they're visually very attractive to you, and they're you're drawn to them in a way, and you're drawn to their physical and their appearance and what you see about them, and then at the same time while you're drawn to them, there's a feeling that you get, and it's an uneasy, queasy kind of feeling, but it doesn't make any sense because this just looks like a very perfect sort of opportunity, visually very appealing, and it fits into a lot of different ideals about, what something should or someone should look like and appear like to your liking. Tripping your trigger, as Mama Fiyah would say. But something doesn't feel right. And so there are many times that we will ignore the thing that doesn't feel right because visually it just looks exactly like it needs to look. And we'll say, well, I'm tripping. Let me just go. Ain't no reason to be scared. Everything that we feel, I was saying, Mama Fiyah, everything that we feel in terms of an emotion isn't limited to the two feelings that we hear, particularly young people and not so young people talking about, Mama Fiyah. They're either angry or they're afraid. And they'll be afraid and say they're angry, but that's like the only kind of feeling that we are reaching for as opposed to paying attention to the other things that we're feeling. And so when there's a misalignment in what you're looking at and what you're feeling about what you're looking at, that's cause for investigation because that means something isn't lined up. And when we don't honor that about ourselves, usually we end up making a decision that doesn't turn out the way we might have envisioned. Because we weren't really looking at it with our heart, we were looking at it with our eyes, and it all of the checks were going off for our eyes, but for our heart, something else was happening.
Yeah. And once the children were born, you gotta kind of see the movie. Yeah, you gotta see the movie. The entity wanted them. And there was a guy, Gary, who came in, who was one of these madmen, as they call them, other people who were able to exist in the world, but were drawn, driven to getting people to look at the entity. And they were all white men, but Gary came in and pretended that he was not one of the entity things, but he was waiting for those babies to be born.
Yes.
And so while Sandra Bullock, they were
in labor, right?
What happened? No, I was talking about something else. While she was going up the stream, there was an entity that came and wanted, the children to take off their blindfolds. And
right. So beautiful.
Travante was fighting them. They were like, y'all have children in there, huh? Y'all got children or whatever. And so they were, I think that's something that people miss too.
Right.
That, that there's a like war to keep the children safe.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of reminds me of what's going on right now with the children here in New Orleans, or with children, period.
Everywhere.
Children are the biggest resource that we all have for our future,
Right.
And it would have been so sad if one of the children were to commit suicide. But I just think I want us to all realize that children are very precious, and they're precious to us. And there is a charter school, war happening right now, and children are at the center of that.
Right.
And I think it's important for us to go off the grid with our children and make a choice, with our children, instead of fighting over what's best for them. You're just doing what's best for them.
That's right. I agree with
Yeah, I mean, I just took that opportunity to say that.
Well, it sounded like the point of a lot of that was that this movie resonated with a lot of things that people can connect to. That's part of all those different connecting points, I think, is why it has so much traction and so much interest. And so some of the we got to remember, depending on what our location is with how we understand things, family. And listen, I'm going to tell, just to be clear, that's why there's some difference in opinion about certain type of things, not necessarily a whole lot of analysis, because we're going to come at it from whatever our box is, whatever our space is. And so like the brother in the movie, what was his name? The first brother, Charlie was saying, there were demons, and he's talked about, and he's like, well, I ain't talking about just Bible spooky stuff, but demons, like, because that's a reference point to demons and demonic, good and bad, good and evil, black and white, like all these different kinds of things. We've been socialized. We got a little program running in our heads, and what we don't know readily is how that is affecting us in a given moment. And so we think many times that our thoughts are our thoughts. We think what we're thinking is totally objective, and that we're looking at something with an open mind, and and we like to think that about ourselves. The reality is, though, we're looking at it through whatever the lens of our experiences are. We're looking at it through our particular paradigm. So depending on where you're at with something has everything to do with what you saw and didn't see in the movie, because your mind wants to make sense of what you saw. And part of the reason why I think there's been so much talk about it, Mama Fiyah, is because it on a purely emotional level, or on a purely limiting sectarian or box or religious or whatever the limitations of the perception is, there's so many holes. And I think that's why the discussion is so robust, because you run it through that particular filter that you have, and you can get some things, but then it's like, well, what about this? And I know that was pretty big. I don't understand why they did that. That was stupid, or whatever we come up with, because we're looking for some kind of coherent thought about what we experienced. Because watching that movie was an experience, and it was intended to be, and the whole idea of watching it, and the visual, and the having to cover your eyes and listen and smell, and heightening all your other senses that we normally ignore, for survival. You know, when he told her, what he told her, he said that these children need a good mother, right? And that was interesting that he said that.
That whole conversation was interesting.
That was a very interesting conversation that they were having. And he said, what did he say? Come on, Mallory, you haven't even named them. You know, it's been like 5 years and you calling them girl and boy. And you know, granted, when he met her, she was pregnant, wasn't his child. The other baby came from the other woman who was also pregnant at the same time. And so she was like, everything I've done has been to keep them alive, like so that they can survive. So there's that human spirit, there's that maternal instinct, and then, you know, then they had a little domestic disagreement. You know, they're one of the few people left on the planet that they know of,
right.
And he's critical of her parenting, and she didn't even want children. You know, that's important too because she was in total denial about her pregnancy. She wasn't connected to the father. Like they
definitely wasn't conscious conception right there.
Right. So they had a lot of stuff happening in the midst of the apocalypse. You know what I'm saying? Before the apocalypse. I'm only bringing that into the conversation, Mama Fiyah, is because Bird Box, without context, looks like this thing that they just threw out there and said, boom, look at that. But that's never what's happening. This is happening inside the context of what you talked about, what you touched on politically, the political climate. This is happening amidst the gender identity conversations and the binary and the thebes and the sexuality conversation. This is happening inside of interracial relationship conversation. Like all of these things are already in progress.
Yeah.
So when this movie occurs, the recall is like, oh wow, look at that. But it's like there's nothing happened that wasn't already happening. This movie just drew you in, entertainment, and forced you to look at these particular things. And while you're looking at that, I'm gonna slide this Bird Box in there. That don't seem to make no sense, but it made us a lot of sense in terms of it being the heart, Mama Fiyah.
But also it makes a lot of propaganda sense too, like as far as programming you to believe certain things. So when the entity comes, there's a moment where you're like, oh, and you see it, and then their eyes change. Their eyes change for one, and they turn blue, right? And then there's something that some people had said. I think even Charlie, when he talked about the book that he was writing, is saying it gets the sadness from you, or some kind of sadness. And what I heard the couple of times that I was listening was the lady who went to help Mallory when she was laying on the ground. She was like, she's pregnant, and so she went out and she said, "Mom," right? And so she got into the car that was on fire, and then John Malkovich was like, her mom's been dead for 10 years.
Right.
So I think there's an issue about grief and sadness, but also about ancestors, right? Yes. Like this entity using ancestors, or using the voice of ancestors, because when Mallory was walking through the woods and the entity was trying to get her, Tom's voice was coming out talking about Mallory, talking to her. There's a little tension there with ancestries, and is it an entity using people's voices or channeling ancestors or these kind of things as well. Like right. That was part of it as well. What do you think, Brother Shay?
I think that was a pivotal part in the movie because you saw the struggle. Remember, these things are audible. So you have some things happening all simultaneously. You have the like what sounds like an inner voice that is the voice of your ancestor or someone that you were close to that's talking to you, slightly distorted while you're in this very tense situation, and you cannot visually see because that will cause you to kill yourself. So you have to rely on what you can hear. You're listening for the flood of the birds, but you're trying to feel the presence of something. So that's a lot of confusion. That's a lot of different stimulants that are happening all at one time. And then your root chakra is saying, I have to survive, like you have got to live through this. And that's interesting because while your preservation, self-preservation is right there, front and center, just your heart jumping out of your chest, right on the other side of that is suicide. Right on the other side of doing all this to survive is if you don't do it, then you kill yourself. So look at the paradox of what people are doing. So like when the brother decided he was going to sacrifice himself so that the Mallory and those two children could continue to live under these circumstances, knowing that at any given time, if they looked, they too would suffer the same fate. But when he made that decision, he was actually killing people who were able to see the thing. You know, we didn't touch on that, Mama Fiyah. We got 10 minutes left. Well, not even 10 full minutes. But I think it's important of note to know that it was the supposedly, according to what they said in the movie, the mentally ill people who were able to look at the entity or were not affected by the entity and saw it as a very beautiful, in fact, the most beautiful thing. And I think that is an important discovery because it speaks to a particular clarity where, you know, marginalized folk who, you know, these are the people who end up being able to survive and thrive under these circumstances with the shadow of this entity, potentially putting anybody who will look at it in peril, Mama Fiyah. So I wanted you to talk a little more about the significance of, or maybe just the interesting that they chose a particular kind of people to represent that, Mama Fiyah.
Yeah, I mean, something about them seemed like KKK almost, like each one, like especially the ones toward the end with Tom, it seemed like, oh, you know, like if they would have used the N-word, it seemed like it would have been perfect placement, you know.
Right.
But the mentally ill, and I'm not sure, you know, that was something that Gary said while he was in there. Of course, we'd have to read the book to find out what the author was trying to do. But saying that they're, you know, mental institution and madmen and these kind of things.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know what that says about how we view mental health, you know, politically or whatever. That they're heartless, you know, maybe they're heartless and it doesn't impact them. And, you know, I'm not really quite sure, you know, the message that they were trying to send with that in particular. I just know there wasn't no black ones.
There were no black.
There were not one of them.
They were all white male, pretty much. There was one. I thought I saw one or two white females, maybe, but they were killed because your boy, the brother, he killed them. Yeah, he definitely did kill a white woman, but they were, excuse me, riding around. They were just driving around looking for people and specifically looking for children. And the idea was to get them to look. Yeah. And what was interesting, and this just may be my own perception, what was interesting was that they wanted people to see. They wanted to get them to see. Yeah. It was more important that they actually saw than for them to kill them, because they had the firearms and they had weapons and stuff to just kill them on sight, but they weren't trying to